Tochi did a fire job of writing women. The book talks a lot about how we punish girls who refuse to obey. The world building is magic in and of itself. What up, my channel? Welcome back to another Black Girl Magic vlog. That Black Girl Magic. This is my second installment in my Black Girl Magic series where I critically analyze and review the way that Black girls are represented in the science fiction and fantasy genre. In this installment, I'm gonna be reading 3 books: War Girls by Tochi Onyebuchi, Daughters of Enri by Renike Amayo, and Obelisk Gate by N.K. Jemisin. This series is all about celebrating Black girls in the science fiction and fantasy genre, looking at how they're represented, and judging whether or not these books are good or bad.
You hurt me, you did, several times. It hurts to admit that we're no different. I find it hard to commit, but you don't even try. Still, I'm better with than without you. Oh.
Okay. Let's take it some steps back. So let's go over here. I feel like you're like tossing me to a wall. Like at any moment. I don't know how I did it. That's how I got that. What's gonna touch you? No one's gonna hurt you. I'm gonna hurt myself. Oh god. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So we each get a deck, right? So
I like this. Oh. That's a move.
I'm gonna do this.
Oh god, what is that? What's that? It's a snake. It's a dog. Am I close? Oh god.
You're going cold right now. Okay.
You know, we just get to spend more time together.
I felt a thing. Would you though? Would you?
Feel the whole board.
You're not helping. Confident? No. Not confident. I mean, I wouldn't be either. Go check it out. Okay, rude! My dragon! Yes. He's just got like a different team. This is why I don't want to play with you. And it's really fun. Alright. Set. What fictional world would you want to live in?
Narnia.
What's the first YA book that hooked you?
Hunger Games.
What is your ride or die character in your book?
Annie.
Slow reader or fast reader?
Slow.
Movie or TV show that's better than the book?
Oh, Outlander.
Ooh. Author you'd be too scared to meet because they'd be your ultimate hero and you'd freak out.
J.K. Rowling.
Author that you want to meet because you just love them.
Oh. You guys.
It's cute, but also time's
She wins.
Yeah. Oh boy.
That's less mean, but still mean. You ready? Go. How many words? Where's no one played charades before?
5 words. 5 words.
5th word.
3rd word. Fire? Yes. Fire. 5th word. High.
Oh.
There you go.
My mom and all of the main characters, but also I drew a lot from, you know, my sisters, and also too, like, it's just as somebody writing a character who belongs to a different demographic than me, it's a lot of it is just sort of empathy and, you know, just really making an effort to make them as fully realized a character as possible, and to like just they're human. And it sounds like a very sort of like simple and base and like obvious thing to say, but, you know, I think you see it a lot with, you know, authors who are writing characters from a different background of them. They don't necessarily accord them the same level of humanity that they would accord themselves. And I think that was something that I made a very distinct effort to do with this book, was like, I wanted these people to be like flawed and messy and like capable of joy, but also capable of like horrific things, just like me.
And especially if you're
Happy Halloween, everybody. I just woke up, so I look kind of a hot mess. I decided to watch the latest Bob's Burgers Halloween episodes. I look forward to those episodes every year. I'm a huge Bob's Burgers fan. I also just rewatched the episode where Louise tricks Tina into believing that the ghost of a 13-year-old boy lives in a box, and Tina starts carrying this box around and dating it. So it's about 10:30 in the morning. I'm about to head out to the dentist to get my teeth cleaned. After that, I have a session with my personal trainer and then an hour massage therapy. And then after that, I am totally free. So my plans today are to, of course, watch Halloween Town. I watch that movie every single year. I love Debbie Reynolds. I was so distraught when she died. Halloween Town is literally the movie that made me fall head over heels for magic. Every time that I watch that movie, I feel like a little kid again in the best ways. So definitely gonna be watching that. I'm going to be watching a bunch of spooky movies. I'm going to be doing my Halloween bath bombs that I got from Lush, and then I'm going to be tackling these books. This, of course, is a non-fiction book about the lives of human cadavers, but I won't really be reviewing that in this vlog, obviously. However, I am going to try and start and finish River of Royal Blood, which just came out. I'm so freaking excited for this, and I'm definitely going to be finishing Daughters of Henri. Oh, which you know that if you watched my first Black Girl Magic vlog, you know that I'm loving this book, and I intentionally held off on finishing it until I could finish it for the purposes of this vlog. So I'm going to be watching some nostalgic childhood movies, baking some brownies, reading some Black Girl Magic books. I'm gonna get my self-care routine on, and then I have to pack for New York City because I leave for New York City tomorrow to go to the Well-Read Black Girl Book Festival. All right, y'all, I gotta get going so I can turn these dingy whites into pearly whites, and I will see you in a little bit.
I'm on it, I want it, but why do you seem to call in your eyes? I can't tell if you're here or you're out there. Do you wanna be out there? You don't need to be Prince Charming to me. I just need this to be real. I don't need no fairy tale. You don't need to kill a dragon for me. Still, every time, whatever it is, I keep on trying. 'Cause it ain't hard to forgive when you know what it's like. That's why I'm better with than without you. Oh, I'm on it, I want it, but why do you see?
All right, I need you to know that our ancestors are too in the building. Give it up for Toni Morrison, Audrey Lorde, and Tazaka Shandi. Give it up for your mamas and your mamas' mamas. My name is Mahogany L. Brown, and I am here just to say thank y'all so much for supporting the brainchild that is Well-Read Black Girl, founded by Glory Edom. Please make some noise for Glory. She has all these things prepared for you. But just for 1 minute, I need you to take a deep breath in. Hold that breath. Learn some yoga. And exhale. Feel good, right? Let all the doubt out.
Just understand the diversity of what the literary canon is, and whether you are non-binary, queer, trans, disabled, all of that needs to be introduced into our literary canon, okay? The second thing, which I feel like is so tremendous, the community has been growing large, way bigger than me, and I've been thinking so much about what it means to directly invest and contribute to the achievement and mental well-being of Black women.
But my language comes from a place of struggle. No matter where I go, my accent makes me become the spotlight. Some call it comedic, some question it. My accent doesn't know how to lay still. My accent is a folk dance, a bongo. She knows how to fet. And these lips know how to gyrate like waist on Carnival Monday. This accent is a tongue rolling like the notes of steel pans. She knows too much of the choppy waters of the Bocas. The Tobago in me knows when to hide. My tongue knows how to twist its way to speak the English that's correct. This same tongue know that this accent is the 10th sexiest accent in the world. This accent can say.
So part of this has to do with voice, right? Who gets to tell our stories, and how a Black woman historian can add a lens, see Harriet perhaps through a different lens. Elderly, head covered, head bowed, hands clasped, right? In the corner of your high school history textbook. And it's the woman who shuttled people from slavery to freedom, and then that's it.
Most people don't even know that her first name wasn't Harriet.
Exactly. We know about her on the Underground Railroad, but realistically, that was only 10 years or so of her life. Harriet lived to 91.
Right.
And so what I wanted to do in this book was to help us think about Araminta Ross as a child. What did it mean to be 5 or 6 years old and taken from your mother and hired out to do labor, hard labor?
I don't need no fairy tale. You don't need a killer dragon for me. Ooh, I don't need no fairy tale.
A man is 65 years old and walks to our store and stands on the doorstep, and he stops and he starts crying because he's looking around at all of these books on the shelves that he's never seen, that he never knew existed. That's why we do it, because our stories do matter. We need to see ourselves reflected in books and in literature, and that's what fuels us. And then the communities that we are in right now, and then the communities that we will go in the future, those will fuel us, because it's just validation from our people to say, hey, yes, we're glad that you're there, but we're glad that you're here because our kids are not reading. Some of our kids are not reading. And to know that I can come out of my house and I have to get on a train, ride a bus, walk, and have access to the books that are important to us, that's how we do it. Because we deserve that access, just like everybody else does. Stats to know that many of them not even reading at the 4th grade level, and if they're not, there's a 68% chance that they end up incarcerated. By books, by reading, you hear me? By books. And so it's great to read books about princesses and scientists. They're crucial, right? But to know deep down, it's a movement. It is a movement to get these books, your amazing stories, into our kids' hands so that they can see themselves. And so that's one, getting them to read at their age level and above because of the stats, because of the road they go down, because they're not equipped with the reading skills to be successful in this world. So books, they're not reading at a 4th grade level. The trajectory for them ending up incarcerated on welfare is crazy, just because of where they read. So put a book in their hands. So that's number one. Number two, there's studies after studies that show, you were asking, why should we be doing this? Studies after studies that show that when you see a book that has your face, your ethnicity represented in it, you connect with it on a totally different level. I can read about everybody. Our history's got everybody in it. Great, beautiful, all right. But I didn't read a lot about those. I'm from Oklahoma. I was not exposed to that. And so to grow up and read about books, I'm not gonna call out the people in the history of the books, but to read about those books, I couldn't connect fully. That was not my story. I didn't grow up the way they grew up. And so now to have this space where we can put a book in a kid's hand that they can reflect and connect with, it changes their self-esteem and it changes how they see themselves in this world functioning. And so this is why we do it. It has to be. And we would not be able to do it without people, without amazing women, without authors who continually write from a space of intention, not just writing to get paid, because there's a lot of books out there, people trying to get paid. Right. That's beautiful, continue on, no hate, no shame. But for us, it's really not, people have stories to tell, it's important. But for us, we are choosing to be in a space that can have Charlene's book, can have Amani's book, can have all of these amazing books, and have Mahogany's book on our shelves, because we know what that connection to those kids, and I say kids, but even us as Black women, to see ourselves on those pages and know that we are validated, because man, she went through that just like I did. But I've yet to see that story written from my point of view. It's imperative that we have the spaces that are created to have those type of feelings and conversations. Kids to come in and say, look, somebody stepped out on faith, somebody stepped out on a dream, somebody stepped out on an idea, somebody stepped out into a sea where everybody's saying, no, don't open it, don't do it.
but we stepped out and did it. I don't care if it lasts 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. The whole purpose is to do it anyway. To do it anyway. And to touch those people's lives in that space, even if it's a finite space, to do it anyway. So that's the legacy that we want, and that's the legacy that I hope that my husband and I, 17 years, he still get it, right?
I think in terms of thinking about our own young adulthoods and what was missing in the world during that period, and for me, I know I wanted to fill that void and create the novels that I knew had a right to be in the world but weren't there because of racism. And when I first started writing, I wasn't thinking I'm going to write for young people. I was thinking this is the voice I had, and this is these are the people, the narratives coming through. And someone said, "Oh, that's YA, that's middle grade literature." I'm like, okay, I'm good with that. And I think that's to say that yeah, we're writing YA and middle grade, and these are narratives for all people. Anyone who's ever been that age, and anyone who is that age currently. And anyone who will one day be that age. So it wasn't like I sat down and said, this is what I'm going to do and had all this intentionality around it. It was because it's where I landed.
For me, I was a teacher and a librarian. I didn't even want to be a writer. I got here sort of accidentally.
Woo!
Yeah. I used to work at a charter school in East Harlem at 120th and 1st, and I didn't have anything for my kids to read. They read through all of the books that featured kids who looked like them. And then they're like, where are the vampires? Where's the kissing? Where are the witches and the brujas? I didn't have it for them. And I thought, this is a disservice. This is a lie. The publishing industry is telling a lie to our children that their stories are not valued and that they are not heroes. And they do not get to save the world. And be the one that saves everything and everybody, because let's be real, Black women save this place.
Wanting the books that I didn't have is what made me write the books that I didn't have. Just because, like, I remember being like 16, 17, trying to get into Gossip Girl. Okay, this is cute, but like, where are the Black people?
This is New York. Hello. I know. Woody Allen, just clear the streets of the Black people.
Exactly. And I remember reading, like, I would read like dystopian series and all of these books because I liked the adventure and I liked the pace. But I was always like, so Black people don't survive apocalypses?
Oh, we would. We
would literally be the first. Okay, so this is what we
Okay, boom. You know that somebody has an answer, they're like, okay, boom.
We're not going into the closet, like there's noises in the closet, we're going the other way.
Look, what y'all doing? I am hyper methodical. Like, I have a mnemonic for my process. I only eat raspberries. Inspiration, organization, execution, revision. Like, we go step by step.
Hey y'all, I am officially back from the Well-Read Black Girl Book Festival. That is what I came out here for. It was amazing. The curator for the festival, Glory, reached out to me and offered me free passage into the event and also invited me to this Black Bookstagrammer lunch that was hosted for Black Bookstagrammers to sit down with each other, share space, get together, and just talk about books and publishing. For those who kind of aren't familiar, Well-Read Black Girl is this movement. They have an Instagram page. It's got like 269,000 followers. It is amazing and incredible, and they partner with all of these Black-owned businesses. And this festival goes on every year for, I believe, the last 4 years. This was the 4th year, and it gets bigger and bigger each time, and incredible authors come, like Jacqueline Woodson was there, Nick Stone was there, Danielle Clayton was there. It was so incredible, and the panels were, I would love for literally every book festival that's out there to take a note from the Well-Read Black Girls panels, because I have never sat and listened to such incredible, well-rounded, dynamic panels as I have at the Well-Read Black Girl Book Festival. I'm just absolutely glowing. I got to meet Nick Stone and Danielle Clayton, and we had a really, really great talk, especially about why Danielle wrote The Bells. I want to share this little story with you, because when I started the Black Girl Magic series, I started it specifically because I noticed that non-Black reviewers were not critically reviewing and also not seeing and understanding the themes that exist in a lot of these science fiction and fantasy books written by Black folks. Basically, science fiction and fantasy books by Black authors are read and interpreted at a much more superficial level than science fiction and fantasy books by white authors, and that's why I started Black Girl Magic. And so I was talking to Danielle about The Bells, how The Bells gets read as a very superficial book, but Danielle even said on a panel that she was sitting on, the YA panel, she said, the fact that most people in the world of The Bells want dark skin is because dark skin lasts the longest. And the reason that she created it that way was to provide commentary on how everybody wants to look Black, to have Black features and possess Black culture, but nobody wants to be Black. Nobody wants to deal with the marginalization, the suffering, the structural oppression that Black folks face, but everybody wants to benefit from Black culture and Black fashion and Black beauty. Danielle talked at length about how that was a very present theme in The Bells that a lot of people miss. She also talked about how The Bells was written with a lot of these very delicate, shy, dainty Black girls, because Black girls are always seen as, you know, the warrior, the emotionless, or the mother figure, but they never get to be the delicate, the shy, the gentle, the insecure individual in the room. They always have to be the hardest because Black girls are never allowed to be soft and gentle, to explore their own innocence in a way. She talked about how that's the reason why all the animals in the book are teacup sized, because she wanted Black girls to have like a cute little animal to relate to. The other thing that was said that I really, really loved, I can't remember who said it, but she said, if your knees are bent, you cannot stand for anything, or you cannot stand for anything with your knees bent. I thought that was absolutely incredible. I honestly was just sitting on these panels in awe, just writing down all of these quotes. I feel so moved and inspired and wildly inspired. It was just such an empowering event and a great space, and Jacqueline Woodson was just every ounce of the powerhouse that she is. And I didn't realize that Jacqueline Woodson was queer and has a non-male partner. Like that part where the owner of Mahogany Books talked about how one day she walked outside and she saw this elderly Black man just standing on the stoop of Mahogany Books and crying because this was the first time that he had ever in his life seen a store filled with books that celebrated his people, that had Black faces on the walls. And that was something that he could never have even imagined conceptualizing as a kid, nor could I. As a kid, there was no way I would have believed that that could even exist. I couldn't have even dreamed that up. So I was gifted this amazing tote that says reading for resistance, reading for revival, which is the well-read Black girl mission statement. And then also I was allowed to pick a free book. And so I chose Open Season. This book I haven't heard of before, but it's about the various ways in which genocide has been legalized against bodies of color, specifically Black folks. I also got this book, really, really caught my eye, mainly because of the cover, and then I picked it up, and I'm gonna see if I can find it, but I opened it to this sentence that blew my freaking mind, and I knew I had to buy it. If I can find it. This book contains several essays from Tressie McMillan Cotton about what it means to be Black and a woman. My most prized possession from the festival is Asha Monet's new book, which is My Mother Was a Freedom Fighter. I got to meet Asha Monet and I almost burst into tears on sight. Asha is my favorite spoken word artist. She has a poem, I will link it down below. It's called What I've Learned. I found out about this poem, I think 6 years ago. It's fairly old now, years ago. And I played this poem to death. I listened to it every day for months. I memorized it. I still have this poem memorized. It's 8 minutes long. And if you like ASMR at all, if you like kind of just like really soothing, relaxing, I really think that you need to hear this poem because it's incredible. And then I was also gifted this well-read Black girl t-shirt. Overall, I really enjoyed the event. I thought it was phenomenal. My only really point of contention or criticism, and this is something that I'm going to try and work with the festival on, is that Well-Read Black Girl is supposed to be a space for empowering Black girls, Black women, and Black non-binary writers. All of the language that was used at the event addressed everybody in the room as women, as girls. The second I walked through the door, the person who was greeting me addressed me as she, and I corrected them, you know, and I was like, they. And eventually I just stopped correcting people because it was so prevalent, and it was very clearly a space, even on all the panels, all of the moderators, were only talking about girls and women. I'm 1000% here for having a book festival that centers the voices of Black girls and Black women. Here for that. I absolutely love that, and I will stand by that 110% as long as it exists. However, what I'm not so much here for is portraying this festival as more inclusive of non-binary identities as it is. Only one person talked about non-binary writers, non-binary Black bodies. That was a guest speaker, again, but that rhetoric was not available at all and was not used or talked about throughout the festival. It wasn't included. Non-binary people weren't even, it wasn't even just a marginalization of what it means to be Black and non-binary, but it was a complete lack and failure to discuss what it means to be Black and non-binary. And what I loved about the last panelist, the one who actually did mention Black gender non-conforming people, I love that she said, she's a historian, and she said, there have always been Black gender non-conforming people. Always. I asked her, how do we correct this thinking that prevails in the Black community that talking about gender non-conforming Black people takes away from Black liberation? She said, in order to do that, we have to acknowledge that in the Western world, the world that was forced upon us as Black folks when we were taken here, the gender binary is prevalent, and all of the language is set up for people that live within that binary. And she also talked about how that is based off of ideas of humanity and what it means to be a human. And she then went on to say that that idea of what it meant to be human, the very even definition of it, was used to separate Black people from humanity. Humanity was for everybody else, and Black people were something that were other. She talked about including gender non-conforming people in our language is a form of decolonization, because the ideas about gender that we have now as Black people in America were given to us with our displacement via the transatlantic slave trade. And so I really liked the way that she put that. And it was very new to me to think the relationship between structural inequality as it relates to race and the gender binary is really interesting to me. And I'm gonna pick up her book. I'm filming this on my phone, and the name of her book is on my phone, so I can't tell you what it is, but Wayward Girls, is that what it's called? But I'm gonna leave a link to her book below. She wrote a book, I cannot remember the name of it or her, unfortunately, but she was there speaking about a book that she wrote. Her entire book is about Black women and Black gender non-conforming people throughout history. And I want to do more research on this topic as a whole because, again, we like to pretend that gender nonconformity is just something that white people made up 5 years ago, and it's not. And because we have that notion that it's new, it makes it very difficult for gender nonconforming bodies to be respected, and also it makes it very difficult for Black people to be included in that narrative of gender nonconformity because we see it as something that only belongs to white people. Yeah, it's just a lot to think about. I had a great time. It was very just empowering and incredible and phenomenal and moving, and there were so many times where I felt like just bursting into tears in a good way. So even though I'm not pleased about the way that non-binary people were excluded from the event, I think that the curator of the event is very open, and I'm going to talk with her about it and see what we can do to change that in the future. So my plan tonight was to go out and have some drinks and turn up a little bit in Brooklyn, but after that event, I need to process, I need to read, I need to journal a little bit. So what I'm going to do is stay in and read the sequel to the 5th season. I'm going to eat my leftovers from that amazing lunch. We went to a place called Rocco's Tacos. Oh, it was so good, which I loved because it is Dia de los Muertos, and because I'm traveling, I am not able to honor my ancestors the way that I would if I were home. For those of you who don't know, I am Mexican. So at the very least, I got to eat some Mexican food. Yeah, I'm just gonna sit and meditate and make some tea. I stopped by Brooklyn Tea, which is this place I followed on Instagram for a long time. It is a Black-owned loose leaf tea house. They also sell their tea. And I had, y'all know I'm a tea connoisseur. They had this chocolate tea that was the most delicious tea I've ever had in my life. It just punches you in the mouth with flavor. I ended up buying their blueberry rooibos though, but before I leave on Monday night, I'm going to go back to the store and buy the loose leaf version of that chocolate tea because it is fire. And I will leave a link to Brooklyn Tea down below. And it was really beautiful to be in that space also. Especially because since Brooklyn is so heavily gentrified now. You know, a lot of Black people have been pushed out of the neighborhood and had to close down their businesses. So there aren't a lot of businesses that are still run by Black folks in Brooklyn anymore. Although that there's a huge initiative to make sure that that's changing, and there's a lot of people fighting against that displacement. And like, that's the wild thing about gentrification, is that Black people were already displaced when we were taken to America. And then when we finally set down roots in a city, we get displaced again. A lot of what it means to be a Black American is about fighting to keep your roots even as they're being snatched from you. Okay, I'm gonna read, eat, watch some TV, and I'm just gonna relax and kick it, y'all. And I'll see y'all in a little bit.
We run and go still every time. Whatever it is, I keep on trying. 'Cause it ain't hard to forgive when you know what it's like. That's why I'm better with than without you. Oh, I'm on it, I want it, but why do you seem to call it your eyes? I can't tell if you're here.
Okay, so today is my last day in New York. I just left my Airbnb, and I wanted to give y'all a quick update before I return to Brooklyn Tea. They made the best latte I've ever had in my freaking life. I'm on page 150, and I cannot believe how much better than the 5th season that this book is, especially because the 5th season was such a masterpiece. 5th season laid so many roots for the characterization of so many of these characters, and then you're seeing those roots kind of come into fruition. If Shafa's character had become what he becomes in this book, in book 1, it would not have been as impactful. And y'all know what I'm talking about if you have read this book, but what he becomes is so much scarier than what he was before, which is incredible because I was absolutely terrified of him in book 1. And the fact that he's even more powerful and even more determined and even more disturbing and warped. He's just, this book is the ultimate standard for villainry. Like, I would like YA fantasy villains to take notes from N.K. Jemison's writing of villains, because she gives her villains the same amount of characterization and detail that she gives her protagonists, and a lot of YA fantasies don't do that. What's happening to Alabaster is breaking my heart. He's my favorite character. I think that he's absolutely incredible, but the mystery of his character really is so suspenseful, and I just want to get down to the root of it, you know? And then as far as, I love that Nasan is becoming a bigger character in the book, and I love watching her character learn how to manipulate her father and seeing like that loss of her childhood and the loss of innocence as she realizes that her father is not only weak, but also not the man that she thought that he was. And I feel like that's a lesson that a lot of Black girls have to learn early, which is heartbreaking, but it is, you know, an important part of Black life. So I love that that's in here. And then I also really connected with her because I connected with the way that she was able to not only rationalize but disassociate and learn how to cope with what her father did to her little brother Uche. But I don't know, just watching Nasan's character development is really fascinating, especially because she comes to rationalize with her situation by blaming Essen. And so it's interesting because Essen is on this journey back to her daughter, but her daughter absolutely hates her. It's amazing. I'm wildly impressed. I cannot wait to see where this goes. Yeah. Is that a chicken?
Can't tell if you're here or you're out there. Do you wanna be out there? You don't need to be Prince Charming to me. I just need this to be real. I don't need no fairy tale. You don't need a killer dragon for me. Ooh, I don't need no fairy tale.
I'm on page 335 out of 400 pages of Obeliskate, and all I'm gonna say is Mama Essen has had enough. She is done. She is done with the peace. She is done keeping the peace. She is fed up. At so many points in time, I've wanted to update you on the progress of reading this book, but every single update that I could have given about this book along my reading journey would have been at least 20 minutes long, because I have so many things to say about all of the lines and the symbols and the metaphors. And also, I know I seem fine, but I'm not. A character just died, and I'm not okay. And I know that I'll never be okay, and I'm smiling because I need the endorphins from my smile to keep me from feeling the deep-seated wealth of pain that is welling up inside of me. Fuck all of you who told me to read this book.
I just need this to be real. I don't need no fairy tale. You don't need a kid, drag on for me. Ooh, I don't need no fairy tale. I don't need no.
In this vlog, I wanted to do something different just because there were so many really important conversations that I wanted to share. There were voices that I wanted to highlight that weren't my own. So I really hope that y'all didn't fast forward through the clips from the panels, because I think that the things that those women were saying at the Well-Read Black Girl Festival were so important. And not only that, but the things that were being said are critical to the survival of the Black Girl Magic as a whole. The conversations that were had explain and illustrate and celebrate Black Girl Magic, why it exists, and why we need to protect it. So I figured I would let those conversations take the center stage in this vlog and then just do reviews of these books now that we're at the end of the vlog. So hopefully y'all are okay with that. Okay, let's talk about War Girls by Tochi Onyebuchi. If you want full synopses of any of the books I ever cover in my Black Girl Magic vlog series, make sure that you watch my Black Girl Magic TBR, because I give synopses of all these books in that. So War Girls is set in the year 2172, and it follows the story of two sisters, one who is just wildly intelligent and the other who is mechanically enhanced. They get separated in war-torn Nigeria, and they're just trying to survive and protect the people that they love. The sisters are named Onyi and Ife. I love that they are very different in age, and while Ife was my favorite character, I have the most to say about Onyi's character because I thought that she was so fierce. I loved how fiercely protective that she was of her squad, of her friends, and how extremely fierce she was when it came to her sister. Sister love is something that is underrepresented in books, and the complex relationship between sisters is definitely a very, very important conversation in this book that I personally enjoyed a lot. I don't have a sister, but I think anybody who does is really gonna relate to that aspect of the book. I especially loved Onyi's relationship with Chinelo, one of her best friends. Actually, no, Chinelo was her best friend, and both Onyi and Chinelo are very morally gray characters. There's a lot of moral grayness in this book, a lot of moral ambiguity, as is common in books that are set during wartime. I also thought that Tochi did a fantastic job of doing comedic relief and having funny lines here and there. He's got a lot of flair to his writing at times. He's got a lot of clapbacks and comebacks, and I really, really enjoyed that part of the story, especially after getting to meet him and see how he is in person. It definitely enhanced my experience with this book. I also love the commentary on how war affects girls. That was really well done, and there were moments where the writing was just, I'm gonna give you an example. So on page 123, it says, "The sky turns from blue to pink and the bird song returns. And this time, it's no longer short bursts of gunfire, but a full song with rises and dips, with a melody she can discern, a melody that reminds her of a song from long, long ago." Really, really beautiful, crisp, elegant writing. And I also really loved the political commentary. It was subtle, but y'all, it was there. On page 234, it says, "Onyi watches Ngosi's face tighten her tribal scars. They make her look regal, like the tribal royalty to which she probably once belonged." And y'all know that in the Black community, this is a conversation that we often have with each other about who we were before we were taken from our lands, about how many of us are descendants from royalty and have very, very rich cultural and ancestral histories that we were separated from. So I felt like that line was a direct commentary on how a lot of us come from tribes and civilizations that we are now permanently separated and displaced from, and will never, unfortunately, get to recover those roots. So on page 338, it says, "So many people, the Oyinbo," which means white people, "and now the Chinese place themselves on Biafran and Nigerian soil, and they try to interfere in Nigerian affairs and take and maybe give, but always take. And Ife wishes they would just leave Nigeria alone." Later, Ife says, Maybe we do not need the Oyinbo, and maybe we do not need the Chinese. Maybe Nigeria can handle its problems on its own. I feel like it's very difficult not to understand that this is a direct commentary on non-African folks coming to African countries and installing their own belief system, their own governments, their own way of living, all under the guise of benevolence and charity, when in reality they have, every single time, they have their own agenda at play, and that agenda is often incongruent to the desires of the people who live in those cities and countries. I think that this book had a lot to say. I loved the way that Black girls were represented. I loved the relationships. Tochi did a fire job of writing women. And I stand by that statement. These girls talk about having periods. These girls talk about their feelings, their emotions, but they're more than that. They aren't weapons. They're not the like stereotypical cold, badass, hard girls. Like, they have feelings. And I thought that that was incredibly well done. It's something that not a lot of male writers can pull off, and I have a lot of respect for that. I ended up giving it, I think, like 4.25 stars, just because the writing lost me in some places. I wanted more of that really amazing storytelling that I got in some places but not others. And I know a lot of people like having that mixed bag. You know, a lot of people don't enjoy having the whole book be very like lush and lyrical. It's very technical in some spots, which I like, but I just wanted the writing to be a little bit more consistent in its tone, I guess. I also finished Daughters of Henri. I started this in my first Black Girl Magic vlog, so if you want to see like my full total thoughts, you gotta watch that video too if you haven't already. As you can see, I have a lot to say about this book. I loved this book. I loved this book. I cannot wait for the second one. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The writing. Oh my God, y'all, the writing. First of all, like, I really like, I can't. I'm just gonna babble about this book because I have so many thoughts. The first thing that comes to mind, the enemies to friends trope, yes, is in this book. I've decided that I don't like enemies to lovers. I'm sick of that. I don't like it. It usually, because usually what happens is the two people are enemies, they hate each other, they start sleeping together, and then suddenly they become obsessed with each other and they lose their own characterization, their own individuality, and all their problems disappear, and they're just like, the romance just takes over the narrative and it becomes very unrealistic. I can't do that anymore, and I'm honestly not a big fan of love stories, of romantic love stories in general. I'm a much bigger fan of platonic love stories. Personally, probably because I'm gonna die alone, and I've come to accept that in the last few months. So, enemies to friends is in here, and the development of one of the characters who you start out hating was amazing. Rennie turns this character, who was very much an antagonist, into a protagonist, and I loved seeing it. I loved it. That's another one of my favorite tropes, an unlikable character becoming a likable character. Wow, because it's hard, you know, like, it's hard to change somebody's heart. It's hard to change someone's opinion of another person. So if you can do that through the span of a book, man. I don't know if y'all can't tell, but I'm sick. So that's why you get chain smoker voice Jessie. I don't smoke. The feminism in this book was amazing. It was amazing. It healed me after reading Serpent and Dove and seeing all the bad feminism in that book. Mainly because there are really feminine girls, but they're still powerful, and those girls aren't demonized. Those girls aren't seen as less than. One of the characters in the book is very pretty. She's very pretty and she's very feminine, but she's also incredibly intelligent, and the author doesn't let her femininity take away from her power, which I love, because so often YA fantasies, I hate to say it, but I gotta say it, writers only let a character be one or the other. A character can be pretty or she can be strong, but she can never be both. Rennie fixed that in this book, and it was amazing, and it was something, and it was one of my points of contention with Serpent and Dove. So the feminism was awesome. If you, like, it just, oh my God. There were themes of revenge and vengeance, which is a theme I personally really appreciate, conversations about the morality, the ethics of revenge. This book definitely does not shy away from including West African culture. I got to learn a lot of words that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to learn from reading a fantasy book, so that was amazing. Also has a theme of sexism and the way that girls are oppressed, and I loved seeing that commentary in the book. You get to see these girls, they definitely do live in a sexist society, and you see how they respond to it and how they push back from that, and I think that that was really, really well done. Which brings me to my next point. Another really dope theme in this book was about how powerful girls are caged and punished. Whenever we find a girl that's too powerful, too unruly, too weird, too out of the box, we find ways as a society to cut her down. The book talks a lot about how we punish girls who refuse to obey, and I thought it was incredibly well done. There's also a lot of conversation about immoral men and toxic masculinity and the patriarchy. And what I loved about that conversation was how the author also provided examples of men that are good and how provided examples of how to be a man and to resist the patriarchy. You have men in this book who refuse to do things that are morally unethical. You have men in this book that insist upon consent. And you have men in this book that don't do those things, that are predators. There is a scene of sexual violence in here, but it's not sexual violence on the page. You kind of see a girl crying after she's been attacked by a man, so you never see what happens to her, and it never gets described in any detail, but you know that it does happen. I also really appreciated that Rennie didn't put us through that. I love that she didn't write a full freaking sexual assault scene, but she still was able to include sexual assault and provide commentary on it. But my favorite themes of the book have to be how good people can be enticed into committing unspeakable acts of violence, and how we are all capable of committing unspeakable acts of violence, and in how we are encouraged not to question authority figures. I also really like that Rennie didn't make just the ugly men villains. She also made men that were good looking villains too. We receive messages through the media that only ugly people do bad things. And that's a very problematic way of looking at things, because it makes it difficult for us to believe that attractive people have committed crimes. This is something that has been proven through many, many studies, and has been proven through the court of public opinion. Now we gotta talk about the writing. I think that any non-Black author needs to take a page out of this book when figuring out how to describe Black skin, because this is exactly how you describe Black people, okay? Which is another place that Serpent and Dove failed for me, was the way that people of color, specifically Black people, were described. There were points where I almost cried, because I finally got to read a book where somebody with dark skin wasn't just described as ebony or like a frickin' mahogany tree or whatever. Like, there were full, vivid, rich, beautiful descriptions. It didn't make me feel like Black people were a type of candy or kindling for a fire. I don't know. When she closed her eyes, he paused to watch her dark skin glisten in the moonlight. It's just, it's not like, it's subtle, but it's there. The respect, the beauty, the understanding. And I love it. Definitely gonna be rereading it. That also reminds me that the relationship in this is a slow burn. Thank God. Actually, the whole book is a slow burn. You know that this is a book about twins that are separated at birth, and so you know that they're going to meet each other at some point. That meeting takes a long time. This book is meticulously established. The world building is slow and persistent. So if you want something that's very fast-paced and like satisfactory action, this is probably not gonna be for you. But if you truly enjoy your like good world building, slow burns, excellent writing, this 5 out of 5 stars. Like, I don't know what else to say. Do you see what I did to this book? Part of why it has taken me so long to conclude this vlog, all this footage that you've seen is over the course of like a month and a half actually, because I'm trash, is because of this book, because I don't know how to talk about it. The horror and action scenes in this book, this is the second book in the Broken Earth trilogy, I disappeared into them. I was there. I dissolved into the action scenes in this book. The world building is scientific, meticulously crafted, while still not managing to be info dumpy. The world building is magic in and of itself. And then we have the unrelatable, antagonistic characters that you are forced to empathize with. N.K. Jemisin does not create a character whose perspective you can't see, and there are so many characters in this book. I don't know how she does it. The development of all of these characters is painstaking and deliberate. And there's such a heavy layer of suspense. The novel's twists and turns are carefully hinted at, but they still punch you in the face. It's honestly a perfect blend of science fiction and fantasy with heavy thriller elements. I honestly consider this to be a multi-genre novel. This is a novel that I could put in so many different categories, while still sparing no apologies for its social political commentary. It makes overt references to the transatlantic slave trade, to Malcolm X, to Black American subjugation, and to Black American intra-politics, such as like Uncle Tom, the overseer. I say Black specifically, I'm not talking about people of color. Black, I'm talking about Black people. And then we gotta talk about the writing. It is, it's dry, but also vivid. And I know that makes no sense. Okay, I know. I know. I love that a lot of the communication in the book happens through characters looking at each other and discerning what those looks mean to each other. I like that because a lot of books don't take advantage of nonverbal communication, which is a very big part of communication in everyday life. N.K. Jemisin has the characters use body language, sign language. It's just, and then I also love that a lot of the characters discern the intent of other characters via perception and observation, which makes this novel have Sherlockian vibes. The plot, the book, it felt so real. There are so many moving parts. The story develops and changes, and these characters develop and they break down and then they develop again. Shafa was developed, I think, 3 times through the course of this novel, and he's a villain. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a villain character get this level of characterization before. This is exactly what I'm talking about when I complain about how underdeveloped most villains are in fantasy. Not here. And yeah, I never thought I would say that, like, Shafa was my favorite character, but, like, he up there, yo. He up there. Alabaster had intense development. Nassin had incredible development. So did Essen. So much time passes in this novel, which makes you feel like you've aged with the characters. And that's like not even getting into the quotes, these specific examples I have. I could make a video on this novel. I'm not going to, but I really could. In case you haven't already figured it out, this book was 5 out of 5 stars for me. I just decided to scrap my outro and just do a word of the day because this is the longest video I've ever made. So if you made it this far in the video, which blows my freaking mind if you watched all of this, comment down below with the word glasses or nice glasses, or tell me what you think about my glasses, because this is my first pair of like designer wear glasses. I've been wearing glasses since I was 12 or 11 years old. And I'm a cheap mofo, so I've never splurged on nice ones, and I really dig these. So tell me what you think of my glasses if you made it this far in the video. My Black Girl Magic vlog videos are my favorite videos that I put out on this channel, so I'll try to get another one up soon. We'll see.
That black girl magic, that black girl magic.